Hey everyone, Jeff Lewis here, and welcome to today's temperature check with Jeff. Today is March 7th. Sorry that I'm a little bit late here. I'm an hour and a half late. I took the liberty of deciding to broadcast late since I actually was on a call, some of the many calls I found myself on recently. It was a call with folks who are a lot more bullish on the economy, a lot more bullish on technology right now than I am. And I once again found myself being the bear on the phone. And I want to explain why. So today, we're going to take my temperature on technology's addiction to globalization and the abrupt forced social distancing of that addiction. But first, let's all take our actual temperatures. So do as I do, pull out your home thermometer, stick it in your ear, your mouth, point that laser at your forehead. Let's do what we got to do, and let's get some temperatures. 95. Well, this Kinza thermometer is definitely busted. I'm friends with some of the seed investors in this company. I believe it's a great company, and I'm very supportive, but that thermometer, I just don't trust it anymore. Who knows what's going on? So as I was mentioning, these days, I tend to be the person who is most bearish. Most people I talk to expect a V-shaped or a U-shaped recovery, and myself, a venture capitalist whose literal job it is to be optimistic about the future, I end up being the ultra bear along with my partner at Bedrock, Eric Stromberg. It has been a mindfuck to have gone from a lifetime of being one of the most optimistic people in my circle about the future, about technology, to being perhaps the most pessimistic, not forever, not permanently, but on a 2-year time scale in the United States. I think I'm amongst the most pessimistic investors that exist right now today. Explaining why in full will take many temperature checks. And folks, we're going to do it. Today is the 1-month anniversary of temperature check, and I've got many more to go to explain why I'm so pessimistic, but we got to take it piece by piece. So we'll tackle the first part today. The first part is a brief heuristic that I will offer, and I'm then going to tell you a story about globalization and technology. The first part of the story I've aped from my former boss, Peter Thiel, but the second part is my own thinking, and I just came up with it today, so it might be wrong, but we're going to roll with it. Now, first, the heuristic. Exactly a month ago today, March 7th, I not only started temperature check, but I also left New York City. It is the 1-month anniversary of my frenzied quest to bail on New York City, the city that I love, before what I believed would be an imminent COVID lockdown struck. Now, almost none of my friends in New York, none of my New Yorker friends understood what I was doing. They thought I was crazy. In fact, a few days before I left New York, I had a root canal. My teeth are kind of a mess. I had a root canal. My dentist was like about to go in there and do the root canal, my orthodontist, without wearing a glove. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Do not go anywhere near my mouth without a glove. There's a virus that is about to take over the city. And he thought I was insane. Okay. So like New York was out to lunch. Everyone thought Eric and I were crazy to mobilize to get out of the city exactly a month ago. We both drove out of town that Saturday morning. The streets were packed with pedestrians, cars, business as usual. Despite New York being smaller than Wuhan, where there had already been a full-fledged outbreak, Wuhan was already in a total and complete post-apocalyptic pandemic lockdown, and that city had multiple easily publicly identifiable links with New York, in addition to all of the flights, which had been curtailed by the Trump administration about a month earlier. There were still a lot of travel links. You could connect from other cities, from Wuhan to New York. New York is a global center of commerce. Despite all of that, almost nobody in New York, up to and including the mayor, was particularly concerned. A month ago today, de Blasio, in fact, was telegraphing a nothing to worry about message. And even my smart New York friends, and I hope they'll still be friends with me after this Periscope, but even my smart New York friends, who, if they'd stop to think deeply a few steps ahead and extract the insane establishment propaganda programming from their brains, would have reached the same conclusion that Eric and I did and gotten the hell out. Now, today, unfortunately, New York State alone, as of today, folks, has more reported COVID-19 cases than the entirety of Italy. The population of Italy is 58 million people. The population of New York State, 19.5 million people. Italy, 3x the population of New York State, same number of cases. Meanwhile, as I illustrated yesterday on Temperature Check, if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. I illustrated in graphic, pornographic detail, nearly pornographic, not quite, that it is impossible for a US consumer to get a mask anywhere because everywhere is sold out of these masks. Despite the WHO, which, by the way, sidebar, WHO should be completely shut down, as should probably the UN. We'll talk about that another day. Despite months of the WHO and the CDC telling us that everything was fine and or masks don't help. It was like one or the other. Either everything's fine, there's like nothing to worry about, or like even if it's not fine, a mask isn't going to help you. Despite that, they told us these two narratives. A few days ago, the Surgeon General, as I discussed yesterday, has had to resort to YouTube to teach us via video tutorials how to make face masks out of old rags and t-shirts, okay? This is where we are. So if we extrapolate, how the hell is the US going to have a U or V-shaped recovery in a few months? We cannot get protective gear to frontline hospital workers. The grocery stores are sold out of the paper that we wipe our asses with. The only states in the union that are working in any sort of coordinated fashion are Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia to coordinate in a coordinated way, contain things in those states because it's a shared metro area. Yet we expect that somehow in a few weeks, we will have a coordinated countrywide, nationwide response and everything will go back to normal. The only path to any semblance of normal is the nationwide implementation of test and trace infrastructure, mass surveillance systems for symptomatic indicators, serological testing so we know who has immunity, and centralized infrastructure for isolation, for contact tracing, and for quarantine. So that's what it takes to go back to normal. If you think the US government can flawlessly roll those elements out in the next few weeks to drive a U or a V-shaped recovery, more power to you. I want some of the psychedelic drugs you're having. I want some of that. Just kidding. I actually am not really into the ayahuasca, not really my jam, because I prefer truth to ayahuasca-induced narrative mirages. Now, speaking of the truth, my former boss, Peter Thiel, has long stated his view that there are only two paths to economic growth. Globalization, I get another visual aid, globalization or technology. So you could have globalization, you could have technology. Those are the two different ways you could have economic growth. And Peter has long been short globalization. So I'm going to X out. This is, again, we're doing an improvisation here. We're Xing out globalization. So Peter's been short globalization. Is a very good infograph. Thank you for loving the infograph. I try with the graphics. It's a very low-tech production. But in any case, Peter has rightly long been short globalization. This was clear to me long before COVID-19, but this pandemic has been a major accelerant to the end of globalization. So like Peter was right before, it was sort of going away. Now it's like really gone. It's like really, really gone forever. So globalization is done, okay? That is done. It's over, folks. As I predicted on previous temperature checks, there is probably going to be economic and cyber warfare between China and the US over the next 5 years. And also, I've predicted already that the EU will cease to exist 5 years or so from now. But one thought I had today is that over the past few years, most of the most highly valued technology companies here in the US have had globalization-dependent narratives. Our best US technology companies underneath our noses, without us noticing, we thought they were technology companies. We thought they were on a different axis from globalization. But in fact, many of them have become globalization-addicted technology companies. They have globalization-dependent narratives. And so I would like to introduce for the first time, because I just thought of it about 40 minutes ago, the concept of globalization-dependent technology. Globalization-dependent technology. GDT, this is different from the other acronym. GDP. This is globalization dependent technology. Uber, their entire story. I remember when I was on the board of Lyft, we were competing against Uber's narrative. We're going to take over the world. China, Europe, India, Southeast Asia, Latin America. It was a globalization story. Uber was a globalization addicted technology company. Airbnb, it's all about traveling, sharing your home, one country to another. Globalization addicted technology. More recently, the scooter sharing companies like Lime, but even looking outside of consumer, if we dig into SimilarWeb data, the globalization addiction within technology extends even to SaaS, even to the recent wave of highly valued SaaS company. Predominantly centered on the productivity tools boom, these companies have been far more dependent on global usage, on a globalization narrative, far more globalization dependent than the earlier SaaS wave. So I took a look at Workday's SimilarWeb data today. Workday went public in 2012, and I don't agree with Chamath on very much, but I agree with him that Workday is a phenomenally good SaaS company. It's gotten beat up in the public markets. It's a best-in-class SaaS business. Workday went public in 2012. It gets something like 65% of its traffic from the USA. That is like a US-centric SaaS business, not globalization dependent. Contrast that with Slack, which is a 2019 productivity app IPO. It kicked off the productivity app SaaS boom. Slack gets only 35% of its traffic from the US, according to SimilarWeb. And if we look at the private markets, the one bright spot that everyone is talking about in tech in the US right now is this crazy Notion round at like a reported $2 billion valuation that happened after COVID-19. Notion, folks, gets only 19.4% of its traffic from the USA. What is Notion's number 2 company in terms of traffic? Take a guess. Can anyone guess? Notion's number 2 country. 19.4 from the USA. Number 2, China. Number 2 country is China. US technology has quietly become addicted to globalization. Even pure play SaaS apps like Notion and Slack are not immune. Stricter border controls, isolationism, and a drastic reduction in travel for years to come, again, these are just my predictions, is going to be a painful force and very socially isolated rehabilitation period for the valuations of these companies. And until the valuations catch up or more aptly fall down to meet the new reality, I am actually pretty damn bearish on all growth stage technology other than the companies that I'm already invested in, which I'm very positive on. My name is Jeff Lewis. Today is April 7th. My temperature is normal, although my Kinza thermometer malfunctioned. What's yours?